We're obviously in a massive week of fantasy football, coming off a really disappointing and absolutely exhilarating week at the same time in week 15. Now we're moving on to week 16. And if you advanced in your fantasy football playoffs, congratulations on being here. And also, if you're just starting, let's get some W's and get you a fantasy football championship. Every week, we walk through every position, ranking all of them. So today, I am going through the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 16 fantasy football. I'm doing everything I possibly can to get you guys your fantasy football championships this year. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and just dive right into these rankings right now. So still in his own tier, Tyreek Hill is going to belong here, and obviously whether he plays or not, that's up for debate. Now, early indications are that he is going to play against Dallas this week, and that's obviously a massive boost for this team. Now, Jaylen Waddle dominated without Tyreek Hill last week. They're going to need a little bit more help than that versus the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas coming in pissed off, ready to go. I've got Tyreek Hill easily still claiming the number one spot here for me this week. As long as the dude plays, he's number one. CeeDee Lamb, great number two. I mean, last week was a down week for him, and he still got in the end zone. Now, granted, it was garbage time that actually helped me in one of my best ball teams. But, you know, CeeDee Lamb, even with the bad week, it doesn't really change my opinion of him. Because as we go through the rest of these rankings right now, you'll see that nobody else is averaging 17, almost 18 fantasy points per game. That's just what CeeDee Lamb's doing. 10 targets per game, Tyreek Hill numbers right there. 8 touchdowns. Got one on the ground last week. CeeDee Lamb still definitely number 2 against the Dolphins. Amon St. Brown at number 3. And I got to be honest, like Amon St. Brown, he's taking on the Vikings this week in Minnesota, and it's not like the matchup doesn't really speak to me. It's not a great matchup. It's not the worst matchup. What speaks to me is that I remember heading into last week, I had some questions from some audience members about, am I crazy to bench Amon St. Brown this week? And I said, I don't think it's crazy because we're just going off what he's done the past couple weeks. I understand that. He hasn't been very good, and this is the time of year where it hurts, it decapitates your team if he has a bad week. Amon St. Brown was great last week against a very tough matchup versus the Broncos. That just goes to show you can't bench a guy like this. He's just too high upside. And in a division matchup where they need to look to secure that division, Amon St. Brown, I think, is a big piece of it. Deebo Samuel at number 4. And Deebo Samuel this week in a great matchup. I cannot wait for this matchup, by the way. I think this might be my favorite matchup of the year, honestly. Dirt versus the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, this is football beauty right here. 2 physical teams bringing it back old school. I can't wait. And Deebo Samuel has just been lights out the past month. Lights out. 6 of his touchdowns, all 6 of those receiving touchdowns, yeah, they've all come in the past 4 games. Actually, the past 3. Deebo Samuel has been a nightmare for defenses to stop. And even though it's a tough matchup here against Baltimore, I just don't see it happening. Deebo Samuel is probably carried a lot of people this far, and that's why you're just going to continue to play him, and I've got him here at number 4. I've got both the Los Angeles Rams receivers here at 5 and 6. Puka Nacua still 1 spot over Cooper Kupp. Now, the Rams this week, it's not like their matchup is all that great either. Versus New Orleans, like, that's not great. It's not bad. You know what I mean? I'm not even saying when I rank these 2 back-to-back right here, I'm not even saying I'm expecting big weeks from both of them. What I'm saying with these particular rankings right here is that these 2 guys both have the capability of giving you 25 plus. That's just what I'm saying. Puka Nacua, although he didn't have a big week last week, he was still very important to this offense. Still had 9 targets, or 8 targets. Cooper Kupp finally getting back to who he used to be, which is great to see. I just don't know how long it holds up. And this could be a Puka Nacua week. But regardless of what where you want to rank either of them, you could rank one of them above the other. The reason they're here back-to-back this high is because that's the ceiling they both have. Not saying they will reach it this week, both of them, but they definitely both have that ceiling, and I can't put them on my bench at this point. Cooper Kupp is back in must-start territory officially. A.J. Brown one spot over Justin Jefferson at 7-8. A.J. Brown this week taking on the Giants at home, and Justin Jefferson taking on the Detroit Lions at home. A.J. Brown, I mean, he's just got to drop, right? Like, his fantasy points per game, they still speak volumes to who he is. He can still put up massive performances. That's why he can't really drop outside the top 10 at this point, because he's still very involved in what he's doing offensively. It's not like they've just completely said, we're just going to target Devonte Smith and Quez Watkins. No, A.J. Brown's still the dominant guy in Philadelphia. But A.J. Brown is definitely, he's on a team that is just going in the wrong direction right now. That's just the reality of what's happening. Philadelphia is not headed in the right direction. And against the Giants, I think this could be a get-right week for them. But there's no question that Philadelphia looks weaker right now. And A.J. Brown hasn't scored the past month. So we need more from A.J. Brown. And then Justin Jefferson at 8, we need more from him as well. I mean, Justin Jefferson, clearly him and A.J. Brown are elite. Like, as far as just pure wide receiver talent goes in the NFL, they're both in the top 5 without question. But this is fantasy football. And Justin Jefferson last week wasn't good enough. It was the Jordan Addison show. Now, this week against the Lions, I like the matchup personally. I do think this is a week where he could get back on track. And a lot of times, I will start him again this week, but we'll need to see what happens over the week. DJ Moore, Mike Evans at 9 and 10. DJ Moore this week is taking on the Arizona Cardinals, and Mike Evans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both of them get a great smash matchup. I love the both. This is the thing about DJ Moore, is that I've said this throughout the year. His ceiling lies with Justin Fields. When Fields is in at quarterback, that's where his ceiling gets to be like 30 to 40 points. Now, he didn't do it last week. I'm not saying he did it against the Browns. But the Browns are the Browns. They're tough. They're tough defensively. Arizona, yeah, they're not going to be stopping DJ Moore. The only thing that can stop DJ Moore and the Chicago Bears is the Chicago Bears. So I like DJ Moore a lot this week. And Mike Evans, I think that he gets back in the end zone last week. Didn't have that dominant of a performance again. But, you know, Mike Evans against the Jaguars, where Tampa Bay is leading the division right now, must-win game against a team that is also sliding fast. So I think that Jacksonville's weak right now. And I think that Mike Evans has just been so good this year. Big play opportunities always going to be there. And Baker Mayfield has really been better than I thought he would be, propelling Mike Evans to a top 10 seed in Week 16 fantasy football. Nico Collins at number 11 and Brandon Ayuk at number 12. Nico Collins taking on the Browns, and Brandon Ayuk taking on the Ravens. So Nico Collins, obviously, totally dependent on if he plays. If he plays, he will likely have CJ Stroud back in the lineup, and that makes a huge difference. And even without CJ Stroud last week, Noah Brown, when Nico Collins wasn't there, he was great. I don't know if that, you know, I think a lot of that had to do with against Tennessee, and Cleveland is obviously not going to let that happen. But Nico Collins, to me, I mean, when you just look at his numbers on the screen, this is a player who's been really, really dominant. And now that he's without Tank Dell, clear wide receiver 1 when he's there. And by the way, when he got injured against the Jets a couple weeks ago, he was on pace for a massive game. Massive game. So Nico Collins, I think that he's in great shape again. And Brandon Ayuk versus the Ravens, at this point, there's a clear line between who I want between him and Deebo Samuel. I want Deebo right now. But that doesn't mean Ayuk isn't a great option either. Ayuk is still a very good fantasy option. Against the Ravens, they're going to need a lot of things to happen. These are both the number 1 seeds in their conference, so they're going to throw everything at each other. That's why I want Brandon Ayuk in one of my fantasy lineups this week. Jaylen Waddle and Michael Pittman Jr. Jaylen Waddle at 13 against the Cowboys, and Michael Pittman Jr. against the Atlanta Falcons. So Jaylen Waddle goes off. Against the Jets, it's a great performance we've all been waiting for, really. Now we're asking ourselves, is he better without Tyreek Hill? I mean, because last year he was great with Tyreek Hill and not great without him. So it definitely makes you wonder. I don't think that the Cowboys defense is going to be in a good mood in this game. And I think that when Tyreek's supposed to play, Jaylen Waddle is still up in the air to me. Like, I don't know what his ceiling is with Tyreek because we haven't seen it be tremendously high like it was last year. There's not as much consistency there. So I'm waiting to see what happens with Tyreek Hill and what kind of percentage of health he comes back at. And then Michael Pittman Jr., obviously, he may very well not play. I mean, if you didn't see it, he took an absolute shot against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They suspended that Devonte KZ. They suspended him for the entire year for the hit. Whether or not I think that's right, that's not what the channel is about. Michael Pittman Jr., if he plays against the Atlanta Falcons, give me Michael Pittman. I don't care if he comes in, and he's, dealing with maybe some back issues from the hit. Give me Michael Pittman Jr. against the Atlanta Falcons here. Stefon Diggs and Devonte Adams at 15 and 16. Diggs taking on the Chargers in Los Angeles, and Devonte taking on the Chiefs in Kansas City. Stefon Diggs, I mean, my issues with him have been that this whole season has been rocky. Literally the whole calendar year with Diggs in Buffalo has been rocky. Buffalo and him have had contentious relationships all year long. And it's carried into the season. And, obviously Josh Allen threw the ball 15 times last week. So it's not like we can look at it and say Stefon Diggs is garbage now. Because, in fact, one of the catches he made was absolutely unreal against the Cowboys. Diggs it's a worry for me. But against the Chargers, I do like the opportunity, obviously, because Devonte Adams just went off against them. But I'm definitely nervous here with Stefon Diggs for sure. And then, like I said, Devonte Adams to me, last week was last week. And I love that we saw better performance from him last week. Does that mean I can fully trust him? No, it doesn't. Because the Chargers, they quit last week. I mean, I said it on my Monday night live stream. That team quit. So I don't think that this is some locked and loaded Devonte Adams is back. Aiden O'Connell had the game of his life against the Chargers. I don't think that happens in Arrowhead this particular week. But I do, of course, still like Devonte Adams because he's still elite, capable of having big games like he just put up. Devonta Smith and then Keenan Allen. Devonta Smith at 17 taking on the Giants. Keenan at 18 taking on the Bills. Devonta Smith, I mean, like I said with AJ, like this Eagles team is worrisome. And of course, NFL football is different from fantasy football to a certain extent. Well, I have a problem with this because Jalen Hurts is he doesn't look like himself right now. And I know that he's injured. I mean, he was questionable heading into the Monday night game. He ended up playing, but Devonta Smith, it's kind of taking a backseat again to AJ Brown, and neither of them have a ton of upside right now. They all still have the kind of hidden upside right now because of what they have done and what they're capable of doing. But right now, this team is not right. Against the Giants, though, I'm going to take a shot at Devonta Smith a lot of times. And then Keenan Allen versus Buffalo. I think that Keenan Allen is just in a situation where his quarterback stinks. And even if he plays this week, which I'm not sure if he will, I haven't read much of an update at all. Keenan Allen, I think that his ceiling is just 100% lower. I've said this without Justin Jefferson, without Justin Herbert, not Justin Jefferson. Without Herbert, there's no over the top. I don't worry about Keenan Allen getting 10 to 12 targets per game. I think it's clear that he will, based on the receiver talent or lack thereof that they have on that team. There won't be any over the top plays. There's not going to be any 50-yard touchdowns like there could be with Herbert. Keenan Allen just doesn't have that quarterback right now. So ceiling definitely lower. T. Higgins and Chris Olave at 19 and 20. T. Higgins making a triumphant return against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, and Olave at the Los Angeles Rams. So T. Higgins, multiple reasons why he's back inside the top 30. T. Higgins, great game last week. 2-touchdown game. Looked dominant. Did what he does best, which is jump balls. And also no Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, if you did not hear, separated shoulder in that game against the Vikings on Saturday in Week 15. And they're expecting him to miss at least this week against the Steelers. So T. Higgins goes from 4 receptions this past week, to possibly 8 receptions this week. I don't think that I can put T. Higgins much higher than this, though, because, look, 4 receptions is what he got last week. And by the way, Jamar Chase missed about half of that game. So it's not like he was just kind of, behind Jamar Chase for most of the game. No, T. Higgins had plenty of opportunities. In fact, he dropped a pass last week. T. Higgins is not right this year, I still don't think. He had a great game, and I like to see it because I like the player, but I still can't fully rely on T. Higgins right now. And then Chris Olave obviously missed Week 15, disappointed a lot of people, and whether he plays or not this week, up for debate. Against the Rams, give me Chris Olave. I mean, this is a defense I've been saying for months now, just not good. They're just not good. Terry McLaurin just ripped them to shreds for almost 150 yards and a touchdown. Chris Olave, if he plays, give me Chris Olave. Their backs are against the wall in New Orleans. They're fighting for playoffs. Olave, if he plays, easily a 12 to 15 target guy for me this week. Rasheed Rice, Amari Cooper, 21 and 22. Rasheed Rice versus the Raiders, and Amari Cooper at Houston. Rasheed Rice, I read a comment on one of my videos after Sunday. And the comment said, at this point, Rasheed Rice is must start. And you know what? I freaking agree. Rasheed Rice, in most cases, I can't advise sitting him. Look, the last 4 games, 9 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets. This guy is the number 1 wide receiver without a question. And we knew this. He's clearly the best one there. But my problem initially with him over the past month was the consistency just isn't there. I'm starting to buy in. Because, listen, the Chiefs are getting desperate right now. They need to win. And they're taking on a divisional opponent where Rasheed Rice, if he gets 9 targets again this week, I think he could have another big game. And then Amari Cooper versus at Houston, he did what he does sometimes last week. In Week 15, gets in the end zone, gets over 100 yards, and it's yes, if you started him, great. I started him in a dynasty league, helped lead me to the next round of the playoffs. So I like Amari Cooper. The problem is, and I've seen no indication of change, there's no consistency with Amari Cooper. There never has been. And I don't see it changing right now. So are you willing to take the shot against a weak secondary? I am in a lot of ways. I probably will start him again in my dynasty league personally. But is he perfect and reliable? No, he is certainly not. Jaden Reed and DK Metcalf at 23 and 24. Jaden Reed taking on the Panthers and Carolina, and DK Metcalf at Tennessee. So Jaden Reed left the game in Week 15 with a toe injury. Now, whether or not he plays this week, again, up for debate, haven't seen it enough. Jaden Reed, if he plays, give me Jaden Reed. Against the Panthers in Carolina, they just beat they just beat the Falcons, but I just don't think that Jaden Reed is going to be stopped by the Panthers. I mean, this guy, without Christian Watson, is so freaking important. Whether Christian Watson plays or not, that's up for debate. I think Jaden Reed is just really, really hot right now, and they know how important he is. He has established himself in this offense. So Jaden Reed, to me, there's just no way he doesn't get, 8 to 10 opportunities in this ball game through the air and running the ball as well. And then DK Metcalf against Tennessee, I'll be honest here, I've seen a lot of Drew Lock hate after the game because obviously DK Metcalf wasn't as great as he could have been. I will say that Drew Lock put a beautiful ball in DK Metcalf's breadbasket en route to winning that game against the Eagles on Monday night. Not saying that he's a great quarterback or anything, but I will say that, DK Metcalf still obviously is a big play threat. He just needs a quarterback to get it to him, and he did it a couple times. Is Geno better for him? Yeah, probably. But the reason that DK is still this high, I could have put him lower, but the Tennessee Titans matchup is great. I love the Titans matchup. They got ripped apart by Case Keenum and Noah Brown last week. I like my chances of DK Metcalf having a good game, whether it's Drew Lock or if it's Geno Smith. Calvin Ridley and Jakobi Meyers at 25 and 26. Calvin Ridley at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jakobi Meyers at the Kansas City Chiefs. There's so much I want to say about Calvin Ridley, though. Like, I got to be honest. I'm going to keep it as short as I can. I got so much to say, starting out with, I think I was right before the season on Calvin Ridley. My take on Calvin Ridley that got a lot of flack was, I don't understand why people are so excited with him. This guy hasn't played a full season since 2020. And all of a sudden, we're just supposed to, did he get put in a freezer? Like, did he just de-age? Did he stop aging? Was he Walt Disney for a couple years? Like, that's just not how it happened. And he is showing clear signs of regression. I'm not saying he's not a talented player. He clearly is that. But he just isn't, his body is just not there for a full season right now. The past 2 games, 12 plus targets, and very little to show for it. Trevor Lawrence is not innocent in this, but Calvin Ridley drops a lot of balls that are catchable and just doesn't show a lot of effort a lot of times. I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this take, but I wanted to move him down this list. The only reason I didn't is because he's playing the Buccaneers, and also because Zay Jones looked like he's going to miss he's probably going to miss the rest of the season. So Calvin Ridley out of pure necessity here at 25. And then Jakobi Meyers continues to just overperform expectations. I don't know how else to put it. The guy has been boom or bust with Aiden O'Connell. And his boom games aren't that high, which is why he's at 26. But there's no question that he definitely can do it. Against the Chiefs this week, you know, they're basically done. It's not like they're competing for playoffs or anything like that. But Jakobi Meyers against the Chiefs, I mean, the ceiling is certainly there. He's a risky play, though. I will say that. Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins at 27 and 28. McLaurin taking on the Jets in New York, and DeAndre Hopkins taking on the Seahawks at home. Terry McLaurin, what's my gripe been about him all year? If you've been watching this channel for the most of the season, you know that my gripe with Terry McLaurin, when I'm asked about where he is in these rankings, he just doesn't have the ceiling. His ceiling, like 14 to 15 fantasy points in half PPR this year. Well, he smashed that last week. Almost 150 yards receiving against the Rams last week. So it's like the ceiling is all of a sudden there. And you know what? On paper, this matchup doesn't sound great. The Jets are eliminated from playoff contention right now. Their team is falling apart. They've been breaking all season, but now I think without the possibility of Aaron Rodgers coming back anymore, without the possibility of playoffs, their team is done. I think Terry McLaurin could easily have another big game this week. That's actually kind of a low-key call I'm going to make this week. And then DeAndre Hopkins, my suspicions on him were, confirmed last week. DeAndre Hopkins just still is not trustworthy. Not him, the player, but his fantasy value because of the quarterback and because of the offense is not all the way there. Against the Seahawks, I think the matchup is opportunistic, and I think that DeAndre Hopkins is a similar play to Amari Cooper in a lot of ways. So I could see playing him. But make no mistake, I've got very little to no trust in Hopkins. Noah Brown and Cortland Sutton rounding it out. This is a strong top 30 list this week, I got to tell you. Brown versus Cleveland and Sutton versus New England. These guys being my bottom 2 speaks volumes to how I feel about the wide receivers this week. I've got a lot of confidence in a lot of guys. Noah Brown last week lit the world on fire. I mean, not James Cook level, but he did very, very well. And I had a lot of doubts. I did not see this coming. I said that, Davis Mills was not going to do well. Well, he didn't even play. It was Case Keenum. So I got that one totally wrong. But Case Keenum found Noah Brown in the end zone. Found him several times throughout that game. And now this week he gets a worse matchup and Nico Collins comes back and it's like, I can't rank him as high as I would if Nico Collins was for sure going to miss. Which I guess we'll see what the updates are throughout the week. But Noah Brown's still definitely a viable option, especially if they get CJ Stroud back this week. And then Sutton here, obviously Sutton his story's been pretty consistent and easy to follow for me this year. a player that is heavily used in the red zone and now getting big plays as well. And now is actually starting to look like, well, I mean, he is their #1 target, but he's starting to get more targets over the middle of the field, during, in between the 20s for shorter yardage. So if Sutton can do that against New England, he's still got a very low floor, I think. But his ceiling, I think, is actually starting to go up to the 20 to 25 point range. And as I do at the end of every single ranking video, I give you my favorite underdog wide receiver play of the week here. Now, honestly, this one to me is super good because I just kind of went on a tangent about how I don't trust the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And that's why I have Parker Washington of the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa this week as my underdog wide receiver of the week. So who is Parker Washington? For those of you who don't know, Parker Washington is a rookie wide receiver out of Penn State. I scouted him very heavily in my 2023 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. And I remember in that draft guide saying, this is one of my top favorite sleepers in this draft class. He is a gamer. This guy is mostly out of the slot because he's smaller and not a burner, but he's quick. He runs crisp routes and he catches everything that comes his way. Parker is a great player. And I think that this week, no more Zay Jones, no Christian Kirk, him and Calvin Ridley, Parker Washington, I can easily see having a good game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for Week 16 fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 12 updated defense rankings for your fantasy football playoffs, click on this video right here.